Today you are going to be adding a watercolor wash over some of your drawing. It doesn't have to be over all of it. It might make sense to do some things more than others. At this point, you should be on your watercolor paper. You should have drawn with precision using tools like rulers and things to make circles where it makes sense. You should have areas that are shaded and that you've given detail to, so when you start looking in close, we're able to see the detail in the different areas of my painting or my drawing that will soon be a painting. So the deal is this: when we start to do a wash over this, the goal is not to make really solid dark colors, but to add accent to it where needed. So at this point, we're done with we've used our Micron pen because we know it's permanent and it won't bleed when we add water to it. We're on that heavy gauge watercolor paper. We've erased away all of the pencil that's underneath and cleaned all that like eraser dust out of there. And then we're going to set this aside, okay? And we're going to go back to our sketch. And I'm going to use this, which is sort of a rough version of my sketch. And we are going to do a little bit of practice and a little bit of, let's remember what it was like to watercolor, because we haven't done it in a while. And we're going to start adding like to this just to sort of get the idea. So we should probably have something underneath. So I'd open up like your manila folder or something to protect your table, and you'll have your water and your paints. And I would also get a paper towel. So on the regular paper that we're going to practice on, if you wash too much into it, you're not going to have much luck pulling color back up or lightening if you need to. If you do it on the watercolor paper, you actually will. So my thought was, when I gather my imagery, that I would be doing some night sky up here. So I'm going to be doing things first, like painting in small detail. So I'm going to do, in my stars, I'm going to be painting them like a yellow value. And I'm not worried that it's like really bright. I just want to hint that that is what's going in there. And so I'm limiting the amount of water as I do this. So I'm wetting my paint. So if I'm painting in a small area, I'm limiting the amount of water. And then I'm going to paint with just the tip of the brush. So I'm going to hint that these are a yellow value. And I'm not trying to make them really dark. If your paints are dirty from painting before, you can go on and clean them some. And if you have other watercolor paints at home, certainly feel free to use those. I'm going to be painting my moon. Both some yellow, so I'm washing that lightly, and I'm going to be adding a little bit of like some yellow orange to the edge of it to give it some value change. So I'm using analogous colors, the colors that are close on the color wheel, and I'm just sort of like practicing what I think is going to happen on my larger one. So in this background area, I'm going to make sure that my brush is good and clean, and I want to do more of like a wash. I don't want it to be too dark. So I'm just going to practice like using that extra water, washing that blue into the sky. I'm going to stay away from my clouds, which would be sitting right above. I'm going to try mixing some of this violet. So that's kind of light, so I'm going to make sure that I'm adding enough blue into it not to get it too, there we go. So now I'm getting some blue violet. I'm going to make the sky values of blue and violet, and that was from my PowerPoint that I made. I saw like a night sky that was blues and violets, and I'm going to come through here putting those in. And again, I have pencils sitting under here, and even the pencil I can still see through. So I'm just sort of practicing how I think I'm going to mix it. I'm going to try this other value of violet. It's a little bit softer. And then, you know, I'm practicing mixing to get the value that I want. And I want it to have different values in my sky. If I want it to be a solid value, then I'm going to mix it in the lid here of my tray. But I want mine to have some values that are like where you can see some violet. And I'm going to go right over the lashes. So I'm going to be painting right over the lashes, right to the top of the eye. And then I'm going to let the night sky sort of fade out. Now, below here in my final, I do have some city blocks, but for the purpose of like what I just want to demonstrate today, I just recreated a part of it. Now, I want to do in parts of this that is a it is a saw blade. I want to make it sort of a grayish black, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to get a piece of just total well, actually, I'm going to just use the corner, and I'm going to sort of test it. Okay, so this is the one I want. It's like a burnt umber and a little bit of that black mixed together, but I want it to be really light. I'm going to dab here so I don't have too much, and I'm going to be washing that to make a gray. So I'm not trying to go really dark, but I'm going to wash to make a gray. I might choose to do a little bit darker in the tips, so I'm going to sort of practice that here and controlling the points. So when I'm doing this, I'll be painting some areas with more precision that I want to stand out, and some areas I might be just doing light wash. Some areas I might leave totally alone. So here I'm going to blend between these two. So I'm just practicing on here the things that I really want to stand out. Now I do have an area, so I have a clock and a gear in here. I might leave my clock face white, or I might wash a light gray. And I'm just going to sort of like play around with the colors a little bit on this, where I'm not tied to it. Like, it's not part of my permanent. It's just starting to help me map out where things might go. I was thinking about putting like a turquoise color washed over the details in this area. So I'm going to just sort of practice and see what the sum total of all of this looks like together. And I do like how that looks next to like the gray that's sitting here. I might leave the symbol white, but for right now I think I want to use this on this interior blue part of the eye. I'm going to leave the white of the eye almost completely white. I'm going to just wash a little bit of value into this edge, just a little bit, so to give it some depth, so it'll be like darker in there. And I'm then going to lighten the value. So now I'm just keep going back to my water, and I'm never putting wet right next to wet or it will bleed out. So I'm not letting that touch, but I'm letting that fade out. I'm going to do a red in the corner of the eye. I drew a heart, so I know I'm going to do red in there, and I'll probably do a little bit darker on the edges. So we're just using those like ideas when we were painting our circles, our delineated circles, and I'm just sort of mapping this out. This is like city, sky. Up here we have clouds. I'm going to just see what this looks like. I'm going to mix up a little bit of white and a little bit of gray because I want it to be like night clouds, and I don't like that. It's too dense. So I'm just going to sort of up here practice. And I do like that. So this is like a lighter version of gray that I'm going to wash over the clouds. And once I sort of have a plan going and ideas about where I want to put color, and I've practiced the technique that I want, then I'm going to come onto here and I'm going to start in areas of precision that are light. And I'm going to load my brush, and I'm going to dab off any excess. I know I need color, I just want it in these stars. So I'm going to be really careful using the tip of the brush. And I'm going to put yellow into there. And I'm going to leave those alone while they dry. I'm going to start in, make sure I push into those corners. Remember, you're always just using the very tip of the brush when you're doing details. In my moon, I'm going to be washing this light yellow over. I'm going to actually do the whole moon, and then I'm going to wash some orange or some yellow orange back into this back area. So it looks like it is fading into this lighter yellow. So I'm going to put a base of yellow down. There's lots of water in it. The paint is not thick. At no point should your paint be thick and covering your pen work. So this is, we're really using a wash technique. If the paint is at all thick when you put it on here, you should definitely add water. If something happens and you add too much or it starts bleeding, you dab up to remove some of that water. I'm going to wash some orange in this back section. Just a little more hint of color. And I'm not trying to overdo it. This is going to be sort of subtle. I don't want it to be sort of like obnoxiously taking over. The color should complement, not detract. So I know I want this blue to be very sort of watered down at first. I'm going to just put on extra water. And I'm going to start washing that blue of my night sky. Now, I know I want it to be a bit darker, so I'm going to just start gradually adding a little more color. I'm also going to go into my violet because I know I want to add that. But I don't want it to be that brash and that harsh. So I'm always like adding water and toning it down. I'm going to try and keep it out of my eyebrow area. And so it's going to wash right over the lashes, and I'm going to neatly paint my way in there. But right now that's wet, so I'm not painting in there right now. And I'm going to let it sort of, as it goes to the edge, I'm going to let it fade out a little bit. So here it's going to be darker, and then I'm going to allow it to fade. Again, I'm washing over, staying outside of my interior part of my eye. But this is all just light wash, okay? If you're doing something that has, plant life or mountains or anything like that, you're always testing and building colors in the top of the box or outside of here before you're using them on the surface of your drawing. And I'm going to pull some more violet into this area, tone it down with a little more blue. Okay, so this is like how I'm going to wash through here, and I'm not going to complete this thing, but I'm going to continue with, my saw blade was going to be here, so I'm using a blackish gray, and even a blackish gray, when washed on here, is not losing my pen values. The pen values are really dark where I've layered them up. This is going to be just like a silvery light gray to medium gray. If it gets too dark, I'm dabbing to pull a little bit up. I'm going to use that teal or that turquoise color to really make the middle come to life and to focus. So I'm going to actually put it here. And again, it's still a light wash. I'm not making it really dense and dark. If it gets too dense and dark, I will go back through and lighten by adding a little water and dabbing I think this is okay. I like that it has some pop of color, but it's not overpowering it. And again, I'm painting detail, so I'm painting with the tip of the brush. So when you're thinking about this, think about adding it just as an accent wash. What areas make sense to paint? What areas might make sense to leave? Now, and even within this teal or this turquoise color I'm using, I might do, like, I'm going to do these edges a little bit darker, let it fade to lighter as it comes to the middle. So I'm actually out here going to add a little more, and I'm going to do it to this side too. So I'm going to go from darker on the edge and then fading to light as it comes to the middle. And that'll again give it more depth as I'm doing this. So out here, just adding, like almost dry brushing, but adding more dense color and then fading to lighter. It's just one more detail to give this interest. Okay, so there we go, better. If you're unsure of a color or you didn't test it, I would always test it. So I'm going to do red in this heart in the corner. And I do want to, in the white part of the eye, I want to give it a tiny bit of graying, like so it looks like it is fading into these edges. So I'm going to just very lightly come into here, lots of water, so I just want to create like a really simple darkening around this edge. And this is with that warm black actually. And then it's going to fade. And I'm going to follow it along the riveted edge down here. It's right through here. I'm just adding a little bit of value so it's not left completely white. And it's going to wash like over the rivets, but I'm really controlling the amount of paint. And oops, I just hit too much. So I'm going to go back to my water, drag the water through there to lighten. If it doesn't lighten enough, I'll dab it with my towel. And corner. So I still am allowing it to remain almost white there. So it's fading back to the white of the page. And I would say my advice would be take your time, go lightly. You can always add more, but it's harder to take it away than it is to add it. So I'm just doing a really light gray in here, and it will fade to light, darker on the edges over the riveting, but I'm not losing any detail. If at any point your paint is thick, stop. It means you have too much water flooding your palette. Got it? And that is it. And just the biggest rule is don't paint wet right next to wet. Make sure that the one color is dry before you start adding the other. Okay, and when you're done, photograph your work and submit.